Guests, please rise. Please direct your attention to the brow for the arrival of the official party. Captain John W. Francis, United States Navy, Prospective Commanding Officer, Maryland Blue, and Mrs. Sally Larson, ship's sponsor. Captain Harold E. Marshall, United States Navy, Prospective Commanding Officer, Maryland Gold. Captain William D. Larson, United States Navy, Supervisor of Shipbuilding, Conversion, and Repair, Groton. Rear Admiral Howard W. Habermeyer, Jr., United States Navy, Commander, Submarine Group 2. Rear Admiral Thomas W. Evans, United States Navy, Deputy Commander for Submarines, Naval Sea Systems Command. Vice Admiral Henry G. Childs, Jr., United States Navy, Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet. Vice Admiral Roger F. Bacon, United States Navy, Assistant Chief of Naval Operations for Undersea Warfare. Representing the Governor of Maryland, the Honorable Louis L. Goldstein, State Comptroller of Maryland. Admiral Charles R. Larson, United States Navy, Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Pacific Command. Captain Francis, the crew is assembled for commissioning. Very well.
Admiral Childs, request permission to proceed with the commissioning of Maryland.
Very well, permission granted.
Aye, aye, sir. Commander Baldwin, proceed with the commissioning ceremony.
Aye, aye, sir. Chaplain Rozier will offer the invocation. Military guests may remain covered.
As you remain standing in your places, would you kindly join with me in these moments of prayer? Almighty and eternal God, for as long as sailors have gone to sea in ships, they have felt the awesome urgency and mystery which takes them from those they love and to whom they long to return. For as long as ships could bear life through the ocean depths, our sailors have assumed the profound responsibilities of vigilant patrol and preservation of the freedoms for which this nation stands. Today, we celebrate this magnificent ship as the newest heir of Navy heritage and submarine technology and ask for your divine blessings. We pray that those who have contributed to her planning and construction never may have cause for shame, that those whose historic pride and valor is commemorated in her name may be properly honored by her outstanding service, that those who sell her may devote themselves to the fullest accomplishment of their every responsibility, that our nation may look to her always with pride as a model of excellence in execution of her every task. Dear God, we celebrate the commissioning of the submarine Maryland with special praise and gratitude. May we ever draw our strength and support from you, whose holy presence is peace and whose peace is power for us all. This we pray. Amen.
Guests, please be seated. Captain John W. Francis, United States Navy, Prospective Commanding Officer, Maryland Blue, and Captain Harold E. Marshall, United States Navy, Prospective Commanding Officer, Maryland Gold.
What a spectacular day. Admiral Larson, Mrs. Larson, Admiral Johnson, Admiral Scheer, Mr. Goldstein, Admiral Bacon, Admiral Childs, distinguished flag officers, and honored guests. Captain Marshall, the crew, and I enthusiastically welcome you to the ceremony which will place Maryland into service as a commissioned vessel of the United States Navy. Before we move ahead with this decisive event, I ask that you look past the obvious fact that Maryland is a powerful warship. Despite the unpredictable flow of world events, she represents and reinforces a spirit of determination and commitment to keep our nation secure, vibrant, and free. That spirit is present in all of you here, and you should all share our sense of ownership and accomplishment. The construction of Maryland actually started with the taxpayers, who through their leadership in government defined the objective and set aside the scarce resources necessary for such a vital project. The job was then passed to the engineers and designers and craftsmen of the General Dynamics Corporation. Mr. Tatro, we salute the men and women of the Electric Boat Company. Maryland is a stunning technical achievement, and after working with all of you elbow to elbow around the clock for 2 years, we know you are true professionals and experts at your craft. Recognition goes to the Navy technical community at the Naval Sea Systems Command, both in Washington and at local organizations here in Groton. Admiral Evans, Captain Larson, Mr. Johnson, you have attacked every problem and driven them to solutions. Maryland would not be here without your hard work and persistence. Admiral Habermeyer, Captain Allman, Captain Adams, Captain Dysart, Captain Mann, I offer my thanks for the strong effort of your staff, instructors, and base facility managers. Even though we were camped in a remote area of the shipyard, you kept us in your field of view and provided the boost needed to prepare the crew for sea and to provide the care of our families ashore. I would also like to recognize the contributions of government, business, and community leaders from southeastern Connecticut. Many of you honored us with your presence here today. The Maryland crew will long remember your hospitality and involvement that has made this area the heart of the submarine force.
As the ship's liaison with the commissioning committee, I have seen the close relationship between the ship's crew and the citizens of Maryland grow. Our commissioning committee, under the leadership of Admiral Scheer and Earl and Shirley Brannick, have done a superb job. Thank you for starting us off in such a fine manner. Naval traditions are very important to every crew. 2 associations here today have established many of these traditions and have a special place in our heart. The submarine veterans of World War II, who have set the standards of every submariner, and the battleship Maryland veterans, crew of the Fighting Mary. For our ceremony this morning, we have the battleship Maryland Bell, and later during your tour below decks, you can see some of the silver that was presented by the citizens of Maryland to the cruiser Maryland in 1906, then was on the battleship Maryland in 1921, and presently has been passed to the submarine Maryland for display. Subvets, Fighting Mary crew, we accept your challenge to carry on your proud traditions.
In a few moments, we will man the watch to breathe life into Maryland. And there is no better representative of that spirit than our sponsor, Mrs. Sally Larson. We hope these flowers brighten your day as you have brought excitement and spirit to Maryland. All submariners owe a great debt to their ladies. My wife never lets me forget that. And ours are the best of the best. Wives and girlfriends of the crew of Maryland, please rise and accept this special recognition for all you've done to support Maryland. You're the greatest. I will now call your attention to the sailors who will soon take Maryland to sea. Every captain will shamelessly brag about the skill and daring of his men, and I'm no exception. But construction and testing of this ship has required much less flair and a lot more just plain hard work. You are the finest young men our society has to offer. You have given the taxpayers their money's worth. Admiral Charles, we are ready for the challenges ahead.
Mr. Roger E. Tatro, Vice President, General Manager, Electric Boat Division, General Dynamics.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm delighted to be here today representing the many electric boat employees who have built this very capable submarine. As we witness the induction of Maryland into the United States Navy submarine fleet, we can feel a special satisfaction recalling the many years of hard work and effort that have led to this day. Maryland is our 13th Trident delivered to the Navy and the 5th to carry the D-5 Trident II missile. The quality of workmanship that characterizes all submarines built by Electric Boat is as much in evidence in this boat as it was in the 12 preceding boats of the Trident class. Considered the cornerstone of our nation's strategic deterrent, the Trident weapon system has been praised for its survivability, its accuracy, its reliability, and its cost effectiveness. Today, Maryland joins a sea-based strategic force that continues to play a critical role in our nation's defense. Moreover, Maryland was delivered to the Navy 2 days ahead of schedule, maintaining the record of early deliveries for the Trident class. And while we celebrate the important milestone that Maryland reaches today, we are further encouraged by the actions taken in Washington with respect to the Seawolf submarine program. President Bush's approval of the rescission package as it was revised by the Congress of the United States will preserve the second Seawolf, the SSN-22, and it retains further funding for future submarine procurement. This is a very important step in maintaining our submarine industrial base. Just a short time ago, Electric Boat was faced with the possible cancellation of the Seawolf program after the first boat. We believe that that was an unwise decision from a number of different perspectives. The most telling reason was that when all costs were considered, it would be more expensive to cancel the program than to build the SSN-22 and the SSN-23. Secondly, cancellation would inflict a devastating blow to the nuclear submarine industrial base, a blow which would have left this nation with a questionable capability to meet its future submarine production needs. And finally, the cancellation would have hurt thousands of Electric Boat employees, as well as those in our subcontractor and supplier base, without any cost savings to the nation. For these reasons, we at Electric Boat and many others, and we certainly thank all of those others who participated, worked very hard to override the original rescission package, and we are gratified that many of our national leaders saw the merits in our arguments. We are encouraged by the added funding for future submarine contracts that was retained in the approved rescission package, and we are hopeful that the Secretary of Defense will see the wisdom in allocating these additional funds toward completion of the SSN-23. Besides economic reasons, the uncertain political climate following the end of the Cold War merits more than a more guarded approach than simply stopping all submarine production for an extended period of time. The threat that submarines are designed to counter has certainly declined within the former Soviet Union. However, there are no clear messages to be derived from other potential hostile countries whose current capabilities are being added to and enhanced. For this reason, submarines should remain a vital component in preserving our freedoms and values, and Electric Boat intends to continue as the preeminent leader in submarine design and construction. Maryland stands here today as one example of this country's technical supremacy, one example of the valuable resources that we have ready to defend our nation. In 1981, the first Trident, USS Ohio, joined the fleet. Today, Maryland ushers in the second decade of Trident operational history. On behalf of General Dynamics and Electric Boat, I want to extend my thanks to the Supervisor of Shipbuilding, Captain Bill Larson, and his staff, to Mr. Scott Johnson of the Naval Reactors Office and his staff, and to Captain Francis and Captain Marshall and their officers and crew for their outstanding support and cooperation during the construction period. To you, Captain Francis, and to Captain Marshall, and to your officers and crew, I happily commend this submarine with the certainty that it will serve our country well. Thank you.
Captain William D. Larson, United States Navy, Supervisor of Shipbuilding, Conversion, and Repair.
Admiral Larson, Mrs. Larson, Admiral Johnson, Admiral Scheer, the Honorable Goldstein, Vice Admiral Bacon, Vice Admiral Childs, Mr. Tatro, distinguished guests, Captain Francis, Captain Marshall, officers and crew of Maryland, ladies and gentlemen. With the commissioning of Maryland today, we add the fifth Trident II capable strategic submarine to our Navy's operating forces. The construction of Maryland was a complex effort, taking approximately 6 years to complete. The process started with Maryland's authorization and appropriation by Congress. The shipbuilder then initiated the material ordering and fabrication that starts construction. Submarine sections were end-loaded at Quonset Point, Rhode Island, and shipped to the Electric Boat land-level submarine construction facility in Groton, where they were assembled into a submarine that was launched on 10 August 1991. Then, as the ship's crew, with ever-increasing confidence, took part, the ship began to come to life. Complex systems were installed, then tested, first ashore, then at sea. When ready, the ship was accepted for delivery to the Navy, and finally, in this ceremony, she becomes a fighting unit to the United States Navy. The process required technical excellence, craftsmanship, and close coordination among the men and women of Electric Boat, Soup Ship Groton, Naval Reactors, the Naval Sea Systems Command, Strategic Systems Program Office, the ship's crew, and numerous other contractor and government organizations. The successful completion of this highly capable, state-of-the-art fleet ballistic missile submarine is testimony to the cooperative spirit demonstrated by the entire Navy and contractor team. A key member of this team has been the ship's force. The crews you see before you today are the life's blood that brings the steel of the ship alive. I can assure Mrs. Larson that they have worked hard in the shipyard and are particularly eager to get on with their real job, taking Maryland to sea in defense of freedom. Captain Francis and Captain Marshall, I congratulate you and your officers and crew on this day as SSBN 738 becomes USS Maryland.
Rear Admiral Thomas W. Evans, United States Navy, Deputy Commander for Submarines, Naval Sea Systems Command.
Mrs. Larson, Admiral Scheer, Admiral Johnson, distinguished guests, crew of the Maryland, ladies and gentlemen. It is with great pride that I represent the Navy submarine shipbuilding team this morning as we offer this ship to the fleet to be commissioned. This dedicated team of professionals within the Navy, working in concert with the skilled craftsmen of electric boat, have produced this magnificent ship that you see before you. As this ship takes its position at sea beneath the waves to become and act in its rightful position as a silent sentinel for world peace, manned by these dedicated Navy men and supported by their families, we cannot have a better investment in the future of our country and the world than to continue to put these ships to sea from that fine shipyard across the river and to be manned by these fine people. Thank you very much for being with us on this gorgeous morning.
The Honorable Louis L. Goldstein, State Comptroller of Maryland.
Thank you. A pleasant good morning, Captain Marshall, Captain Francis, Admiral Mrs. Larson, the other distinguished flag officers on the podium here and out there in the audience, officers and crew of USS Maryland, SSBN 738, distinguished guests, Admiral Harold Scheer, Chairman of the Commission Committee, and members of the committee, and my fellow Marylanders up here, my bosses. Thank you all for letting me represent the governor here today, ladies and gentlemen all. On behalf of Governor William Donald Schaefer and the officials of our state and the citizens of Maryland and the United States Marine and veteran of World War II, I'm delighted to join you to help commission yet another great U.S. ship, Maryland, especially on such an interesting date in history. 50 years ago today, on June the 13th, 1942, 4 German saboteurs were landed by a submarine not too far from here on the coast of Long Island. Fortunately, they were captured. That was 6 months after the battleship Maryland survived the attack on Pearl Harbor, December the 7th, 1941. Just days after the Fighting Mary operated as a part of that backup force during the decisive Battle of Midway. A lot of folks didn't live through those unusual times, don't understand how real the threat that faced our nation in the days, weeks, and months that followed these attacks. A lot of folks don't realize how great the need is today to continue the strong tradition of naval strength, preparedness, and defense that have been a key to America's security since October 13th, 1775. That's when the Continental Congress voted to authorize the purchase of 2 merchant ships, giving birth to the Continental Navy. Those 2 ships, the Waltz and the Hornet, were ready for battle in the great state of Maryland, in Baltimore's famous shipyard, right down there on the Tapsco River. Later, 3 great ships named Maryland helped carry out the great naval tradition that started in Maryland. The sloop Maryland, built in Baltimore and put in service in 1799. The armed cruiser Maryland, commissioned in 1905, and put on board was that beautiful 1,000 ounces of beautiful silver made by Samuel Kirk and Sons of Baltimore. And the state of Maryland has put on this new ship some of that silver. and we'd like to extend an invitation to you folks to come down to Annapolis, be my guest, and go in our historic State House, where George Washington resigned his commission on December 23rd, 1783, and where Thomas Jefferson saw the Treaty of Paris was ratified, ending the American Revolution and extending our territory west of the great Mississippi River. And in that room, we have that beautiful silver on display. Come on down there and be my guest. My phone number is area code 410-974-3801. And I'll be glad to have you and give you some delicious Maryland soft-shell crabs this time of the year. Of course, the Fighting Mary, the battleship Maryland, commissioned in 1921 and earning 7 battle stars for service during World War II. Today, another proud and great ship, the Trident submarine, as described here a few minutes ago. Maryland joins that distinguished honor roll, the 13th ship of the Ohio class, commissioned on this 13th day of June. We've come a long way since 1775, when the flags from the Walrus and the Hornet were put on staffs and paraded through the streets and even the towns of Baltimore to recruit sailors for America's new Navy. And the crew of the sloop Maryland probably wouldn't know what to make of the Trident submarine Maryland. They might not even recognize it for what it is, but they would certainly recognize the patriotism, the dedication, the enthusiasm, the positive thinking, the courage, and the commitment that distinguish the officers and men of every proud ship that has borne the name Maryland, because those qualities never change. One other thing will never change. Thomas Jefferson said it best, and I quote, that internal vigilance is the price of our liberty, end of the quote. That is truer today than it was when the first Maryland was built and commissioned. In the state of Maryland, we're proud of our namesake. The USS Maryland, SSBN 738, will continue to protect the liberty and freedoms that we cherish today and to preserve it for generations yet unborn. Congratulations to all that made it possible. Happy and safe sailing. God bless America and all the ships at sea. Thank you, and may God love and bless you all real good with continued success, good health, and happiness.
Vice Admiral Henry G. Childs, Jr., United States Navy, Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet.
Good morning. I'd first like to read a message from the Director of the Navy's Nuclear Propulsion Program, Admiral Bruce DeMars. For Captain Francis, although I cannot attend your commissioning, I congratulate you, your officers, and crew. The shipbuilder has completed construction. Now you must make Maryland a warship. I am sure Maryland will always be a source of pride to your sponsor, Mrs. Sally Larson. I wish you Godspeed. Signed, B. DeMars. Now, I have to tell you, as a displaced citizen of Linthicum Heights, Maryland, south of Baltimore, and a guy that went to McDonough School in Pikesville, it's my distinct pleasure to commission and accept this Ohio-class ballistic missile submarine into the United States Navy and our Atlantic Submarine Force. The commissioning directive reads as follows. From the Chief of Naval Operations to Marine Force, United States Atlantic Fleet. Subject, commissioning order for USS Maryland, SSBN 738. When Maryland SSBN 738 is ready in all respects, on or about 13 June 1992, you are directed to place her in commission and direct the commanding officer to report by message to the Commander-in-Chief, United States Atlantic Fleet, for duty in the submarine force. Signed, Frank B. Kelso, Admiral, United States Navy. Captain Francis, place Maryland in commission, assume command of USS Maryland.
Aye, aye, sir. Commander Bolden, place Maryland in commission.
Aye, aye, sir. Guests, please rise for our national anthem.
Bandmaster, sound off.
I will now read my orders. Bupeur's Order 0250. When directed by reporting senior, detach in February 1990 from Commander Submarine Development Squadron 12. Report not later than June 1990 to assume duties as Commanding Officer, USS Maryland, SSBN 738 Blue. Admiral Charles, USS Maryland is in commission. I have assumed command.
Very well. Congratulations, Captain.
Captain Harold E. Marshall, United States Navy, Prospective Commanding Officer, USS Maryland Gold.
Thank you. I will now read my orders. Bupeur's Orders 3450. When directed by reporting senior, detach in June 1991 from Commander 2nd Fleet, Norfolk, Virginia. Report not later than October 1991 to assume duties as Commanding Officer, USS Maryland, SSBN 738 Gold. Admiral Charles, I have assumed command of USS Maryland Gold. Congratulations. Thank you.
Executive Officer, set the watch.
Aye, aye, sir.
Lieutenant Commander Chasen, set the watch. Bandmaster, sound off.
Captain, the watch has been set.
Very well. Admiral Larson, I request permission to break your flag.
Break my flag.
Aye, aye, sir. Executive Officer, break the flag of Admiral Larson.
Aye, aye, sir.
Lieutenant Commander Chasen, break the flag of Admiral Larson. Bandmaster, sound off.
Guests, please be seated.
One of the really neat things about being the captain is you can steal all the best jobs for yourself. And that's why it's my great pleasure to introduce the wonderful lady who christened Maryland last August. Her list of accomplishments is long and has always been focused on the welfare of the young men and women of the Navy. All summer, people came up to me unsolicited and said, "You guys are so lucky. You have the best sponsor anyone could have." And so she is. Please welcome Mrs. Sally Larson.
Thank you very much. Geez, what an honor to be here today. And gosh, that was so exciting to see the officers and crew get on board the Maryland. It really gave me goosebumps. As a sponsor of the USS Maryland, it's my privilege to present to the ship my gift. First, I would like to present the VHS tape series of Victory at Sea. I hope when the officers and crew have a chance to kind of review these films that they'll learn a little bit about their wonderful past history of our U.S. Navy and the submarine force. Secondly, I would like to present two $500 scholarships, one this year and one next year, to a deserving daughter or son of an enlisted crew member to further their education in a school of their choice. This is my little contribution to the future. I wish the USS Maryland I wish the USS Maryland great success as it joins the fleet, and I especially wish those who stay at home and serve much patience, a good sense of humor, and happiness. And I look forward to a long and close association to this wonderful ship. Thank you very much.
Vice Admiral Henry G. Childs, Jr., Commander, Submarine Force, U.S. Atlantic Fleet.
Mr. Goldstein, Sally Larson, Admiral Larson, Admiral Scheer, Admiral Johnson, Admiral Bacon, Mr. Tetrault from the shipbuilder, fellow flag officers, crew members, officers from the battleship Maryland who are here with us today, folks who have given much in the service of their country, submarine veterans. You give us tremendous support all the time here in New London. We're delighted to have you back with us. Distinguished guests, men, families, officers of the new USS Maryland. It's a great pleasure for the men and women of Electric Boat, for the people of Maryland, and of course the United States Navy as we put this magnificent warship in commission. And I'm especially pleased that so many folks from Maryland would take the time to come up to these lobster-infested waters from your crab and oyster Chesapeake Bay. And I know this is a busy weekend in the state of Maryland, and it's great that you're such strong supporters of this crew that you would come here. I mean, today starts the Annapolis-Bermuda Ocean Race, and the Mason-Dixon State Chili Cook-Off is going on in Cockeysville. And even more of a sacrifice to y'all from Maryland is that there's the Wine Festival in Havre de Grace. But now, all of these events were on the western shore, and I know that a lot of you here are from the eastern shore, so maybe that's why you came up instead of going over there too far to the west. You all know that this ceremony has been repeated many times in the history of our Navy and about the other 12 Trident submarines that we have in our fleet. Each one built here at EB, each one serving our country, maintaining a strong, survivable, invulnerable strategic deterrent. This submarine's a striking tribute to American technology, and I especially hope that the people of Maryland who are visiting up here will go aboard and take a look at the ship, while you're doing that, I very much want you to meet the crew. Because it's really this crew that's going to give that ship life. It's going to make it do marvelous things for our country. They're superb young people. Those you see on board the deck of this ship today, among the most skilled in our country. And they brought their years of experience together to pull this ship to fruition, ready to go on and do a very tough mission for our country. And they do it with the support of the finest families that the Navy could ever have hoped to have. And Gene, your spirit in working with the wives is tremendous. We appreciate that. The people of Electric Boat have once again delivered us a superb submarine. Mr. Tetrault, you're part Marylander from your 4 years spent at the Naval Academy, and I know it's a thrill for you to be up here. Thank you very much to your people for their great work. Yes, this is the fourth ship to bear the name Maryland. The first three were to protect the sea lanes for our commerce and to take the fight to the enemy. But I would submit to you that the mission of this ship is just as well defined and in a sense even more noble. It's designed to be terribly effective in war, but in fact this ballistic missile submarine and her sister ships are our most effective guarantee of the peace. Our best assurance that a nuclear holocaust will never become a reality. And our submarines have been making deterrent patrols for 31 years, more than 3,000 patrols. That's 6,000 hellos and goodbyes, times the number of people in the crew. That's a lot of honeymoons. Over 80,000 man-years submerged for our country. Never a missile fired in anger. They preserved the peace. And there's some in the post-Cold War era that would say that we don't need this deterrence anymore. They've forgotten that there's still 25,000 or more than that nuclear weapons in the former Soviet Union. They haven't ratified the START Treaty. There's still heightened political and economic instability in the world. Some of the third world countries want nuclear arsenals, and we're concerned that maybe there's some folks from the former Soviet Union that might help them get it. And so in the face of an uncertain world order and unpredictable future threats, drawdown in our strategic triad as a result of economic pressures, these ships are more important than ever. They provide nearly half of the country's strategic deterrent for about 30% of the cost, and only 3% of the Navy's people. A real bargain, as Mr. Tetrault told you. And I'd remind you of what George Washington said in 1790 to add to what Mr. Goldstein said about Thomas Jefferson, and his quote is like this: "To be prepared for war is one of the most effectual ways of maintaining the peace." End quote. I think that fundamental wisdom is just as true now as it was 200 years ago. The passage of time doesn't alter the truth. It just seems to alter the technology. And USS Maryland and the men who sail her represent the bedrock of our national security. They're the folks who will keep the peace. And it's my pleasure today to introduce a man whose thoughtfulness and experience during 34 years of naval service have made him eminently knowledgeable on the importance of strategic deterrence. He graduated at the top of his class from the Naval Academy in 1958. He was a naval aviator, and after being in the cockpit of attack planes, that sort of said, "I like confined places," so he shifted over to the submarine force. He served on 5 submarines, 2 ballistic missile submarines, commanded the USS Halibut for 3 years. He was the first naval officer to be a White House fellow, and after that was the naval aide to the President of the United States. He commanded Submarine Development Group 1 in San Diego. He was the flag officer in charge of the Strategic Submarine Division, and then the Long Range Planning Group, looking 20 years ahead to prioritize the objectives for our Navy for the early 21st century. Almost 10 years ago, he took command of Submarine Group 8 in Naples, Italy, but before he became too familiar with La Dolce Vita, the sweet life of Naples, he was yanked out of there to become the superintendent of the Naval Academy. And it was in this job as superintendent that he proved that you never really forget the important things you're taught as a midshipman. And he was still well enough to tune to midshipman views in their mind that whenever his youngsters decided to go over the wall, Admiral Larson was right there waiting or with his guys to catch them on the other side. So even in that job, he was an effective deterrent. After the Academy, Admiral Larson commanded the Second Fleet, served as the Deputy CNO for Plans and Policy and Operations, was Commander-in-Chief for the Pacific Fleet before his present job. And I have to tell you that the United States Pacific Command is the largest unified military command of the United States. It's over 100 million square miles, 52% of the Earth's surface, from the west coast of California to the east coast of Africa. Admiral Larson commands some 390,000 people, 250 ships, 2,500 aircraft. He's responsible with the military relationships with some 40 countries and deals with 50 U.S. embassies and missions. He's a true leader, as described by the people who work for him, except perhaps in golf. Now, but nobody can beat him on an exercise bicycle, and you can't really fault the submariner for not having a perfect swing with the small spaces we have to work in. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Admiral Chuck Larson, Commander-in-Chief, United States Pacific Command.
Thank you, Admiral Childs, very much for that kind introduction. Admiral Scheer, Admiral Johnson, Mr. Goldstein, Admiral Bacon, Mrs. Larson, that has a nice ring to it, Captain Francis, Captain Marshall, many distinguished guests and fellow flag officers and members of the submarine community, but most especially today to the crew, the friends, and the family of the USS Maryland. I'm really honored to be part of this historic event today as the fourth ship to take the name Maryland is commissioned. You know, the third Maryland earned 7 battle stars in my area of operations in the Pacific. She was the first ship we had to mount 16-inch guns. She survived Pearl Harbor, and she became a mainstay of the amphibious campaigns in the Pacific, seeing action at Tarawa, Kwajalein, Saipan, Palau, Leyte Gulf, Surigao Strait, in Okinawa. We've got a lot of veterans with us today from that battleship, and this is part of their reunion here, and I think we owe them a lot, and I'd like to ask us just to give a little round of applause to those World War II veterans from the USS Maryland. I can tell them that I'm sure that this boat and this crew will wear this name with pride as they join a select team and become aware of their very unique history. You know, the ballistic missile submarine force that you joined today is the most successful military endeavor the world has ever known. And I believe that it was really instrumental in winning the Cold War by deterring conflict. You know, a few months ago, my old boss, President Nixon, at the opening of his presidential library, reflected on a discussion that he had when he was vice president with Premier Khrushchev of the Soviet Union back in the late 1950s, before many of our crew members were even born. And when he and Khrushchev were debating, Khrushchev said to him, you know, your children will live under communism. And then Vice President Nixon said to him, no, your children will live under democracy. Well, at the time of that conversation, the first nuclear ballistic missile submarine, the George Washington, was under construction. And when it put to sea for its first patrol in November of 1960, it inaugurated the most potent and most reliable force for peace in the Cold War. And it marked a very major step forward in our containment strategy. Well, since then, world communism has collapsed, the Soviet Union has disappeared, Eastern Europe is free, and the threat of a short-notice global war has really receded. And the U.S. ballistic missile submarines have completed more than 3,000 patrols. Many people in many nations contributed to this remarkable victory, but I think the members of the submarine community deserve very special credit. And as the chairman of our Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Colin Powell, said last month, and I'd like to quote him, "No other members of America's armed forces have been given so great a burden of responsibility, and no other members of America's armed forces have so earned America's trust." Well, today we stand on the brink of a new era. The strategic environment has changed, but the nature of man has not. The world remains an uncertain and an unstable place, a place where intent can change overnight, and where the spread of modern technology and weapons of mass destruction are raising new concerns, and where thousands of nuclear weapons are available in 4 countries, which were formerly part of the Soviet Union. In such a world, nuclear deterrence remains the foundation of all other security considerations and debates. And our invulnerable SSBN force remains the key to that ability to influence deterrence, to all arms control considerations, and to our global security balance. No other system offers the agility, endurance, stealth, and survivability of our Trident submarines. With their expanded load of 24 missiles, the extended range of the D5, the accuracy of the system as a whole, we have an unparalleled capability which no other nation can match or neutralize. So during this time of transition into a new security environment, the relative importance of our sea-based deterrent continues to grow. That's why I see a very bright future for this ship and for her crew. When the keel was laid for this ship in 1986, who would have imagined that before it was completed, one of the most ambitious nuclear weapons programs in the world would be discovered in Iraq, or that one of the largest nuclear inventories in the world would be located in the independent state of Kazakhstan. Today it takes 10 to 12 years to build a new boat, so who can guess what the world will look like a dozen years from now? But what we can tell is that the need for a cost-efficient deterrent force will remain, and that no country will be able to threaten our SSBNs in the open ocean in the foreseeable future. In the long term, the greatest danger I see to our nation is not a specific country or an identifiable military force. It's the unpredictable military scramble that could occur if we withdraw into Fortress America, hollow out our military, and undermine the deterrent force that has prevented a global war for the last 45 years. The threat that worries me the most is that we will forget the lessons of yesterday and leave ourselves vulnerable tomorrow in pursuit of a short-term benefit today. We've got to remember that we can lose our strategic security if we take it for granted. You know, at my beautiful headquarters in Hawaii, located at the America's gateway to the Far East, and in my many travels around Asia and the Pacific, I hear a lot of talk about the relative merits of American workers and technology and then those of other nations. Well, let me tell you that nobody else can offer anything like the American engineering, American ingenuity, and American craftsmanship represented by the ship that we've just commissioned here. And from this day forward, every time the captain yells, "Dive, dive," it'll stand as a vote of confidence in Electric Boat, their subcontractors, and the quality of American labor and management. And also as a unified sink looking across my region, which spans over 1/2 the earth, and looking into the next century, I see a vital need for a modern, capable submarine force. My successors are going to need a stealthy platform with capabilities that go all across the spectrum, from surveillance to power projection. They're going to need a submarine force that can operate with impunity anywhere in the world. So lest there be any doubt in anybody's mind here today, let me state unequivocally that there's a bright future for our submarine force into the next century. But the construction and the organizational skills required to build this modern wonder are perishable. We must find a way to preserve the industrial base so that we will be able to build the next generation of submarines to support adequate force levels in the 21st century. I'm confident that our nation's leaders will find a way to keep it on track because it is an imperative. And that brings me to the importance of protecting the key component of this entire system, the quality people and their families who make up the submarine community. The sailors who wear dolphins are special men, a tight-knit, disciplined family. The pressures of the job require their full concentration. When this boat passes the sea buoy outbound on patrol and the cold, dark sea closes over a hull that won't see the light of day for many, many months, there's no time for worrying about whether the families are properly cared for or the crew is properly trained. They've got to know that their families that they leave behind are well supported, and those families have to know that the Navy is behind them all the way. Yes, there will be reductions in our Navy. A smaller force makes quality even more important, and so our efforts to attract and maintain these people are even more critical. And let me tell you, I got a first-hand look at quality yesterday. Sally and I had the opportunity to tour this beautiful ship, and we walked through the compartments and met the petty officers in charge of each compartment, saw their pride, saw their professionalism. I got to tell you, it really made me proud. If we're to chart a safe course in the shallow water and the dangerous currents of this new era, we must not and we will not compromise on the standards for our people, for their training, or for their quality of life. Now let me turn for a moment from the general to the particular for those who will serve aboard Maryland, because I got to confess I do have a special tie to this boat and its crew. As a member of the band of brothers that wear the dolphins, I've spent almost 4 years of my life underwater. As they mentioned in the intro, I've served on 5 hulls, including 2 boomers. I've been fortunate enough to have 3 submarine force commands. And in my first admiral's job back in 1979, I served as the Trident coordinator and the director of all strategic submarine programs on the staff of the C&O in Washington. This is when the Trident program was first getting off the ground, and if you'd have looked across the river here, you'd have seen the Ohio up there on the bank looking about like the follow-on submarines look today. So I know that new construction duty is some of the most arduous, yet some of the most important in the Navy. With its deadlines, its long hours, exacting standards, and the stress of knowing that every decision you make in the shipyard you'll have to live with later on patrol. And I know the challenge that the skippers face in building teamwork among new crews, taking a new boat to a new home port. And as a husband and a father, I know the sacrifices about the crew and the families, about the separations these people have already suffered just by virtue of the fact that they're in the service, about the tension the whole family feels from an impending move, new homes, new churches, new schools, leaving behind good friends, starting all over again. And I know the special demands of ships in the yards. Sometimes it seems a lot better to have your sailor out there at sea, gone for long periods of time with a predictable schedule, than having him work those long, unpredictable hours in the shipyard. At least that's what Sally always told me. And sometimes when I work too hard, she still tells me that. But it's because I understand your sacrifice and your contribution that I'm especially pleased that Sally could sponsor this boat. My time at sea was her time of leading the family. She survived in the early days, she survived on 15-word familygrams, and then they increased it to 25 so she could really communicate with me. She made all the major decisions on her own, paid the bills, raised the children, and she shared in our pride when things went well at sea. I'm proud of her, and I know that she's very proud of you. And to Maryland, what a great state. We got so close to the people of Maryland during our tour when I was superintendent of the Naval Academy, and I can't think of a nicer combination than an outstanding crew, a beautiful submarine, and the state of Maryland. And to the crew we watched with interest when you grew from 50 power plant operators and support ratings to over 300 crew members. And we rejoiced when the champagne broke over the sail almost a year ago and broke on the first swing. And we took note that you worked especially well with the shipyard in the closeout testing and inspections that you were the first ship in many years to have all spaces turned over to the crew at the first sea trial, and that you finished early. And now we wish you all the very best as you enter the role of active service and depart for a new life in Kings Bay, Georgia. So I want to conclude with both a challenge and a promise. A challenge to the captain and the crews, both blue and gold, to take care of this boat, take care of each other, and dedicate yourself to a mission as important now as any time in the past, and that's deterring war by always remaining ready. And in turn, a promise. I promise both personally and on behalf of your Navy leadership and all of your friends in the community who are here today to work for continued first-class support for you, for your families, and for your mission. Because I know that months from now, when you slip through distant oceans, deep, quiet, alert, and listening, and isolated from the world, that I want you to rest assured that you can count on us, because I know that we can count on you. Thank you very much.
Guests, please rise. Chaplain Rozier will offer the benediction.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we now commend this ship to your care and keeping. Cause her fame to spread throughout the land, so that the young may desire her service, the old may admire her deeds, and all may honor her name. Bless those who sell her, and the families and special friends whose profound love provides support. Sustain them within your grace and love. O God, may the United States ship Maryland sail always with total confidence in the everlasting promise of your presence, power, and peace. Amen.
Side boys, post. Sink pack, departing. State Comptroller of Maryland. Vice Admiral, United States Navy, departing. Sub-Lant, departing. Rear Admiral, United States Navy, departing. Subgroup 2, departing. Soup Ship Groton, departing. Admiral Bacon really liked the dome. Maryland, Gold, departing. Maryland, departing. Crew, parade, rest. This concludes the commissioning ceremony of the United States ship Maryland. Guests are requested to remain in place until the official party has boarded the tugboats and the tugs have departed. The ushers will assist you in leaving the pier and boarding the buses. When the tugs have departed, the ship will be open for tours. Guests desiring to tour the ship should remain seated and wait instructions from the ushers. I now present the Northeastern Navy Band under the direction of musicians First Class Callahan.